I have built housing. I know how to build affordable housing. I've done it.
I'm running for Seattle City Council to fight for a city that works for all of us and not just the wealthy few.
I, Tanya Woo.
Since January, Tanya Woo has helped fill a vacant city council seat, and she's now running to keep the job for another year.
I think our biggest contrast comes in terms of our approach to public safety.
How long have you been in the city?
Alexis Mercedes Rinck is her formidable challenger, winning over half the vote in the August primary.
We've done a lot of hard work to get to this point.
My name is Tanya.
How's the bike infrastructure there?
Will Seattle voters favor incumbent Tanya Woo or opponent Alexis Mercedes Rinck in this citywide race?
We need to ensure that we balance our budget and pursue progressive revenue so we can fully fund our city services.
The candidates debate.
Taxation should be the last resort because affordability is paramount importance to people.
The high-stakes battle to pick the next representative for Seattle City Council Position 8. Next on City Inside Out. Welcome to this edition of City Inside Out. I'm your host, Brian Callanan. In the Seattle City Council's citywide Position 8 race, political newcomer Alexis Mercedes Rinck took more than half the votes in a surprising primary win over her opponent, incumbent Tanya Woo. But repeating that result for Rinck in the general election will be a challenge, up against Woo's strong business and community connections. The stage is set for a battle between Rinck, a policy analyst with progressive plans to change Seattle, and Tanya Woo, an incumbent who says she wants to refocus the city on its basic priorities.
And this is why I'm actually really excited to run for city council.
Challenger Alexis Mercedes Rinck
Hi, I'm Tanya.
and incumbent Tanya Woo want your vote.
I'm running for Seattle City Council to fight for a city that works for all of us and not just the wealthy few.
I think we're making progress, and I feel like Seattle has a bright future ahead of us.
Rinck, a first-time candidate who's a former budget and policy analyst at the UW, won the primary with a 50.2% majority. She's raised $297,000 as of early September and is endorsed by several Democratic Party organizations for the nonpartisan council position.
I think the work that we've done to build a strong coalition behind this campaign speaks to why we won the primary.
Woo lost her bid for the council's District 2 job last November, but was appointed to the Position 8 seat in January after the departure of Councilmember Teresa Mosqueda. Woo has raised $313,000 as of early September and earned 38.4% of the primary vote. Woo has the endorsement of all but one sitting Seattle council member.
I'm really proud of how collaborative the council is and the work ahead of us and the work that we're doing right now.
Rinck points to her consensus-building work for groups like the Sound Cities Association and is pushing for new revenue.
I've been really focused in this race on being clear about Washington's upside-down tax code and the need for progressive revenue, especially as we face the potential cuts to our essential city services.
Woo touts her small business experience and says the city shouldn't be asking for new revenue first.
We can't just keep imposing new taxes.
Woo says public safety represents the biggest difference between the candidates, and she wants the SPD to hire more cops. Plus,
Building back up our police department to be able to train and recruit new officers so that we can get our call times down.
Rinck says she wants to set realistic goals for police hiring and hopes to utilize officers and 911 alternatives to combat crime.
We want to be building a public safety system that is a quick response and the right response to given public safety scenarios.
It's a new progressive face and primary winner up against an incumbent on the job for less than a year in the race for citywide Position 8.
And I've built a reputation for getting things done.
We need to get past ideological theories. We need to do what works.
And we have both candidates here for the council's Position 8 seat with us. This is to fill the spot until the year 2025, when there will be another election for a 4-year term. So we have with us Alexis Mercedes Rinck. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And we also have with us Councilmember Tanya Woo, the incumbent. Good to see you, too.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Let's jump right into it. We had a coin toss before the show. Alexis, you'll be speaking first. Tell us why you're running. I'll give you 1 minute.
Wonderful. Well, my name is Alexis Mercedes Rinck. I am a renter and light rail commuter. I went from waiting tables next to the Space Needle to working on policy at the UW Tower, and now I'm running for Seattle City Council to fight for a city that works for all of us.
and not just the wealthy few. And in my work across communities, I've gained a reputation for bringing people together around solutions and making them happen. I got my master's degree at the UW, and since then I've worked with over 100 different organizations and with 39 cities in King County on the housing and health of our communities. And most recently, I was working back at UW in the budget office, bringing together the university and balancing budget priorities. And I was brought to this work because of my upbringing. I'm very proudly raised by my grandparents, and that's due in part to the fact that I was born to teenagers who had been caught in cycles of gang violence, substance use disorder, and homelessness. But I got the chance to grow into my full potential because of my grandparents, because of great teachers, and because of afternoons at the Boys and Girls Club. And I stand here today a living testament to when we invest in young people, regardless of their beginnings, we can change generations. And we need to protect those investments for working people and for folks in need. And so in the wake of our city's budget crisis, we need to ensure that we balance our budget and pursue progressive revenue so we can fully fund our city services. I'm ready to step up to the challenge and lead today.
Okay, all right. We'll get into some of those points in a little bit. Councilmember Woo, same question to you. Talk about why you're running, if you could, in 1 minute, please.
Yes, so I grew up here. I grew up in Beacon Hill. I now live in Rainier Valley, and I'm deeply rooted in the Chinatown International District. So I know the difference between all our neighborhoods, from Columbia City to Lake City, and also from like Alki Beach to Matthews Beach. This is home for me. I've tackled our city's toughest issues head on. I've helped put together safety teams to help increase public safety. I've built housing in the heart of our city, and I've also mentored young people and helped small businesses. And I know it's tough right now, but I think we've made a lot of progress in our city, and we can continue to make progress. So my top 3 priorities include, number 1, public safety. I want to build a city our babies will feel safe in, because when our kids are safe, our families are safe, and our community are safe. Number 2, affordability. I want to be able to build and retain our generations of people who live and work here and make room for the next generation. And number 3, we have to address our homelessness crisis, which includes, King County Regional Homeless Authority. How do we make sure that it's reformed and lasts for future generations, because we need this to happen in our city. And so I love my city. I've lived here my entire life, and I know that what matters most is delivering results, and I intend to do that.
All right, thank you very much for that. We'll pull apart some of those issues as well. Alexis, maybe I can go to you first, because you list the need to find more progressive revenue as a top priority in your campaign. You mentioned it just a few seconds ago here. What options do you want the city to consider that it hasn't looked at already?
I appreciate that question. And the budget crisis is so front of mind for many folks across our communities, especially since the number one thing I'm hearing when I'm talking to voters and our community members is a real desire to make sure that we're investing in people and investing in communities. It's what I'm hearing from families wanting to make sure our young people grow up healthy and safe. And it's what I'm hearing from neighbors who want to see our unhoused neighbors come inside. And so, but I think it's also important to be clear that we have a responsibility within government to make sure that we are using resources effectively and really looking across the board. And I bring my experience as someone who's worked in budgets and has balanced priorities across a large institution to really reflect and do that careful work. And taking steps to make sure that if we are talking about a new revenue source, what is it going to fund? And I think doing that careful work, building coalition across all partners, and working with business community, working across communities to get clear if we're going to implement a new progressive revenue source, whether it be expanding Jumpstart or implementing something like a local capital gains tax or real estate transfer tax. What is it that we're funding, and getting clear on that, and also what are the results that we're seeking? Okay,
I'm hearing a few different options there. Thanks for breaking that down. Councilmember Woo, you have said that you don't want to look at new taxes first. You want to pick apart the city's budget, make some hard decisions this fall. So what would your plan be to make up this $260 million deficit? Are there some program areas that you think might be part of those hard decisions in terms of what needs to be cut? Where are we looking here?
Yes, I don't believe that the first thing we should do is look at taxation. Taxation should be the last resort, because affordability is paramount importance to people. I mean, we had the transportation levy, we had the housing levy, and now next year we will have more levies. And we're looking at SBU rates going up, we're looking at Seattle City Light rates going up. But what does that mean to people? Because we're going to see increases in terms of our taxes. And so when it comes to city budget, I approach it as a small business owner. We can't just always constantly ask for more money. We have to work within our means, and we have to look at long-term sustainable solutions versus short-term fixes. And so I think it's taking a hard, long look. The mayor will send down his budget in a couple of weeks.
On the 24th of September, right. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and then it will come before council, and it's up to us as the oversight body to be able to pick that apart and add things, take away things, and very carefully look at how this will affect people. I mean, we're looking at critical services that we need to maintain, but at the same time, keep affordability low.
I want to move on to another piece here, and Councilmember Woo, I'll stay with you. Your campaign website puts public safety as a top priority, and fully staffing police and fire departments is the first part of that platform there. I just wanted to put out this point that Seattle is struggling to do this right now. I know a lot of cities are, but SPD has some of the highest salaries in the state, and there's still an issue with this. I guess I'm trying to figure out, what would you propose to do differently to hire more officers, and why is this priority first on your list?
Yes, public safety is of paramount importance because, as you say, it's the foundation of how our communities are able to develop. And my background has been developing volunteer groups. I have the Community Watch group, started about 3 or 4 years ago, and we're still going strong. We go out in the evenings. We build trust between our businesses, our residents. We go to 12th and Jackson and try to help connect people to resources. We do mutual aid, basically. And so I believe not only do we need to be fully staffed in terms of our first responders, our police, and our firefighters, we also have to make sure that we have alternatives, like the care team, for instance, and also work together with LEAD, REACH, We Deliver Care, groups that are out in community who had developed trust within our many communities. How do we expand them to the entire city? So I think it's a yes and approach.
Okay.
But in terms of how do we hire?
Right.
So just recently, City Council made officer wages competitive. Prior to that, I believe SPD officers were 15th in the state, and then now we're top 5 in terms of competitive wages, and allowing us to hire the best and the brightest, as well as be able to civilize many of our functions in the police department.
Okay.
And so I heard the statistics recently that, we were getting 5 applications a day. Now it's 15. So we're able to hire more. We're looking at lateral transfers now. Whereas
from
in
other
the past,
departments,
yes, we weren't as competitive. But it's not just about pay, it's about morale as well. We have a new city council. I've only been in office for about 7-8 months. But I feel like there is a change. There's a lot more we need to do in terms of culture, and a lot of things we need to reform. But at the same time, making sure that our officers, our first responders, firefighters are feeling supported, that the city supports them, and that we recognize them in our communities.
Thank you. Alexis, I want to talk to you about this. Your online platform says the city must set realistic goals to meet law enforcement and first responder staffing needs. That's different than what Councilmember Woo was saying about hiring more police. I just want you to explain your position on police hiring and how your campaign differs overall maybe from hers when it comes to public safety.
I think when we're talking also about ensuring that we're building a public safety system that has a quick response and the right response, that does mean that we're going to need to increase our first responder staffing across the board. So being able to scale and get really clear on what is the scope of our uniformed officers and what are the activities that we want them to be doing is really important. And how do we get our officers responding to and solving crimes is really what I'm focusing on. And so ensuring that we're scaling appropriately and ensuring that also that does involve hiring more. And so in terms of some of the things that I've been thinking about in terms of hiring for first responders, I think there's a lot we can learn from from industry partners related to hiring. I think there's a great example with some action the legislature took in the most recent legislative session, providing a co-responder licensure program through the UW School of Social Work. This is an effort to say and take steps towards starting to grow our own pool locally. We're not unique in our hiring challenges. There's hiring challenges for police departments across the country.
Right.
And so one thing that we also know is that homegrown talent tends to stay. We see that across a lot of industries. So making those investments into growing our own pool locally from local community members who understand and are connected and able to serve, while also addressing some of the culture challenges there. So really addressing and ensuring that we are bringing in folks into the uniformed force that have the kind of cultural competency and are able to authentically engage in community. And I worry that some of the culture challenges that I think have been well documented related to SPD could be scaring away really viable candidates. And so making sure that we're implementing accountability measures that we've been talking about since 2017 that haven't fully been enacted, things that communities are on board about, and ensuring that by having those in place, that'll cultivate a better workplace for folks.
Okay.
And the last thing I'd say is also just making sure, like, by having these efforts, we're also getting dollars out the door and using our resources wisely, especially in this budget-constrained environment.
Councilmember Woo, do you feel a difference between your two approaches when it comes to your opponent here, when it comes to public safety?
Well, I think there could be a lot of contrast made in terms of public safety with our both approaches. So there are things that council has been looking at, you know, soda, soap.
These are the stay out of drug areas, stay out of areas of
thank
prostitution.
you for that. I keep forgetting we have to stay away from
There's a lot of these
acronyms.
acronyms, right?
Yes, and then things like the competitive wages for officers, the drug ordinance last year, and looking at the different tools like license plate readers, and also making sure that this is a compassionate response and really working hard to get these pieces of legislations, while not perfect, to a good place, where, for instance, for soap, we're going after pimps and johns and making sure these young ladies have resources.
Okay.
When it comes to soda, it's a pre-trial conditional release, and making sure, you know, us as community members and officers know who does what, that, you know, it's really going after the sellers. And so I think all these things I am supportive with and I'm working towards, especially with community. I don't believe my opponent, believe my opponent has come out against many of those legislation pieces.
Maybe we can talk about the soda, soap. What do we got?
Dialogue about this. I think my approach is much more comprehensive in saying, and you know, you're talking also about some of the resources that are made available. Those haven't been made available yet. The majority of the actions that have been taken have been much more on the punitive side, rather. So I would say in this, my approach is much more comprehensive, acknowledging the full scope of the issue and making sure that when we're putting forward legislation, we're thinking about the thoughtful balance between also accountability and support. And right now that hasn't been fully seen. And so by having that kind of an approach and working across the board with all of our partners who are engaged in the work, working with communities most impacted, and ensuring that we are putting together a comprehensive slate that tackles the root of the issue is something that I'm interested in doing. And right now the legislation to date doesn't fully tackle the root of the issue.
Councilmember Kathy Moore and I are working towards putting money into services to help people on Orr Avenue North.
Okay.
We are also looking at budget money on how do we help people with addiction treatment. And so that comes hand in hand with our budget ask that will be sent down in about 3 weeks.
Okay.
And so, yes, I agree. We do need a comprehensive plan. And being out there in community, chatting with people on 12th and Jackson and 3rd Peck and Pine, and going to Aurora Avenue North, visiting the businesses, talking to young ladies, and going to places like Aurora Commons.
Sure.
We really do need a comprehensive approach and looking at it from both angles, and that's what we're currently doing, and excited to be able to see that roll out next couple of weeks.
I think we can all agree that there are challenges in those areas, and I don't think either of us are interested in dismissing what is very real that we're seeing in terms of gun violence, in terms of property crime, in terms of like large-scale retail theft, organized retail theft, I should say. And I think it's really important that we are clear with the public about what solutions will work. And by reinstituting policy that we've already tried before locally that hasn't worked is something that I think is concerning. We need to be also clear with the public that we're doing everything that we can to get to the heart of the issue and put forward solutions that are data-driven, that we know work, and the experts that are working on the ground with those folks have been advocating for.
Thank you for that. I need to move on because I've got to cover some more ground here if I could. I want to make sure I talk about homelessness here. And Alexis, you worked in the past for the KCRHA, the King County Regional Homelessness Authority. Your opponent has brought this up before, raising some concerns that you were part of this budget proposal, helped write this budget proposal that would have cost our region more than $12 billion from the KCRHA. I know Councilmember Woo has said our region needs to be more realistic about our approach to homelessness. I wanted to make sure you responded to that remark about the KCRHA, and also, how would you respond to homelessness if you were elected to the City Council?
Appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to clarify as well. There was much misconception between the drafts of the plans that came out, and I think given that the agency was new when it came out with that plan, I don't know if community fully knew what they were looking for, but something that we were trying to do was really name and do a solid problem statement to say, there is a need for significant investment into housing. And that's what we tried to capture using the best information used, actually, the information and modeling that was done in terms of statewide work as it relates to the comprehensive plan. So trying to really outline, this is what it would fully cost to holistically address the issue stemming from the housing crisis. And developing housing, as we know, is expensive.
Yeah.
However, the 5-year plan itself, in terms of the 77 actions, if my memory serves me correctly, are all things that the agency could be doing in partnership with jurisdictions and providers and internally that would cost no money, are things in terms of like changing policies, programs, reprocuring that would make the system work efficiently, more effectively, more culturally competently, and be more accountable. And so I could stand by and probably give an entire talk about
all 77
everything,
points,
all 77
right.
things, and also, you know, voice that there was a tremendous amount of hard work working with providers, working with folks with lived experience to really formulate that.
I guess I just wanted to talk about that and this root question of your response to homelessness if you're elected. If we can get to that, that'd be great.
I don't want to make light of the challenges facing the agency. There have been challenges in terms of basic operations. I'm optimistic with the new CEO coming on board who has experience running agencies to get that right on track, to make sure that contracts are getting out to providers appropriately, and making sure by having a functional KCRHA, we have a centralized table where we have all the best data about, you know, our current system capacity, and we also are able to speak to the outcomes of our total public investment into homelessness. I think that's the table then with all of that information that we're able to come around and say, what are we going to do about this? And how are we going to invest to scale the housing solutions as outlined in the 5-year plan? And there are solutions within the 5-year plan that we did state to say, if there was new money to become available, here's where we would invest first from a most informed place.
Okay, thank you for that. Councilmember Woo, I want to make sure you jump in here, respond to what Alexis is saying, maybe how your approach to homelessness might differ from hers.
Oh, yes. I think there's a lot of contrast there, too. So I believe homelessness is a housing issue. We need to build more housing, and that's something I've done. I know how to build housing. I've built workforce housing, which only charges people a percentage of their income. I'm working on legislation right now to be able to build more affordable housing. It's also looking at how do we get people inside. As somebody who's on the ground, Tolton Jackson, in our communities, in encampments, talking to our in-house neighbors, and trying to figure out where the broken system has failed them. And how do we build trust with people? And that involves finding social workers who are able to go out there and find the root cause of every individual. It's different. And building that trust to get them to accept services to come inside is really important. I think that's something we have to look at, especially when it comes to all the providers who are out there and the social workers are out there. The Louisa Hotel in my building also has 20 units for the formerly unhoused. And making sure that when we house somebody, we include the wraparound services to help them succeed. Many people come into the Louisa who are formerly unhoused start a fire in the middle of the living room because they don't know how to work the heater.
Right.
So how do you make sure that we have support services available for people to help them throughout their journey and to that same person? I think that's something we really need to look at. So whereas my experience is bumped from the ground level up and seeing what works and what doesn't work and being out there and talking to people, being present when there is a encampment resolution and seeing the effects on the community when people are in crisis, I think is very important. That's my experience going in there. And so I think there's a whole bunch of levels, which also includes how do we help people find entrepreneurship opportunities? How do we help our youth? It's a very comprehensive plan and all things I'm working on currently.
Thank you. And you had mentioned some differences between you and your opponent here when it comes to the approach to homelessness. I don't know if you wanted to bring up encampments and how they're cleared, because I know you've talked about that as well. Some thoughts there. I just want to make sure we're helping people differentiate between you two.
Oh, yeah. So I believe in the mayor's encampment resolution system, which is, 3 or 4 months before encampment is resolved. The social workers are being out there. I would love to see that time expanded to even longer because I think we need time to build that trust. But I believe the city's policy on that is sound. I mean, we don't love sweeps. They're not ideal. But I think we really have to sit down and work on this, and be able to extend that time, build that trust, get people to come inside. It's going to be very important. I think it's inhumane to let somebody die outside. Yeah. And so getting people inside is number one importance. And there's a lot of factors that revolve around that. I've been in encampments where there have been shootings. And so it's getting to know the community, knowing who does what, who needs services, and who are there to take advantage of people who are unhoused. And that's getting out there. It's going to take all of us, not just city, not just county,
Sure.
not just KCRA, but us as community members. And I'm in a couple of weeks, one of my passions is my community watch group.
Sure.
And how do we roll that out to the entire city? How do we community de-escalation teams, very similar to block watches, but outside of the police department, maybe in another department. But that's something I'm really interested in seeing because it's going to take all of us.
I mean, as it relates to sweeps, one of the models that we know works best is best exemplified through the State Right-of-Way Initiative, which is a partnership between WSDOT and PDA, as well as working with the city and KCRHA. And this is different because it does speak to what you're talking about in terms of an expanded timeline. It provides more time for folks who would be long-term caseworkers to be able to connect with those folks, develop a by-name list, and effectively resolve. But a key piece of that is also the fact that that creates a housing resource and being able to point somebody to a place to stay, a single room setting that ideally folks are actually able to more stably recover in and continue to work with their case manager. That's something that we know works, has been wildly successful, and should be expanded upon. And so my support for that type of model, which again, I believe we saw 74% of folks remain permanently housed through that program. That's something that we actually see a valid outcome for and something that we want. And just to respond to the other piece as well, you know, I agree too that the critical work of being able to support somebody in their stabilization and coming back inside relies on our hardworking case managers, outreach staff that are making that contact and engagement. However, many of those folks do not make a wage that allows them to live and remain within the city of Seattle. So we have a huge workforce challenge also in the system that makes it challenging for that important connection work to happen. I've talked to folks who have been unhoused who have had 20 different case managers and they've lost trust in how we can actually get them inside.
I understand. I know we could talk a lot more about this. We need to wrap up the show. Please save it for your closing statement if you can. I can give you a minute here, Alexis, and then I'll give you the last word, Councilmember Woo, please.
There are so many issues facing our city, and now more than ever, it feels like people are divided. There is division across the city. I believe that our division around public safety is not making us any safer. And we also know that there is a tremendous need to invest in affordable housing and just broad affordability measures. It's what people are asking for. People want to see those investments in their city. And I stand by making sure that we fully fund our city services. And so I have proven experience in bringing communities together, uniting around solutions, really putting the issue on the table and problem solving around it and moving forward, turning the page and starting new. And this is the campaign that people are uniting around. We are uniting frontline workers across the city, and we're uniting the Democratic Party and have the support of Planned Parenthood Votes, One America Votes, and a number of amazing organizations. And I'm ready to deliver.
All right. Thank you very much. I can give you a minute, Councilmember Woo.
Yes, and so I am in community, I am on the ground doing all the things that my opponent is talking about. And I'm doing that work, and I would love to be able to continue that work. I have a lot of pieces of legislation I'm currently working on that will help support to be able to build more housing, save our tree canopy, as well as public safety. And so based on my experiences living in Seattle, I've seen a lot of things. I grew up during gangs, basically, and had a lot of family members killed during the gangs era. I've also, seen how our communities have changed and how our communities used to be. And we have to move forward. We cannot go back to the policies from the last 4 years that have gotten us into this situation. And so I'm interested in looking at how we could tweak things to make it better for the future of our city so people feel safe going to the grocery stores, people feel safe going to schools, be able to walk their dogs in community, and also have the opportunity for economic success, be able to start their businesses and not have to worry about whether they can stay open or close, but help provide living wage jobs. And those are all things I'm working on, all things I'm doing and very excited about for the city because I know what Seattle can be. And it's a place where we can all call home and we can make progress for every single neighborhood.
Thank you very much for that, and we will be right back. What are people saying on social media about the two candidates for Seattle City Council Position 8? One person writes, "Vote Woo. Seattle does not need any more Seattle progressives on the council now or in the future." Another comments, "Rinck is sending a loud and clear message to the entire city council and the corporations and chambers that bought them their seats." We'd like to know what you think. Send us an email at contact@seattlechannel.org or find us on social media. Thank you for that input. Thank you for your input as well. And we will see you next time on City Inside Out.